I think that it was a tactical advantage, I think more than the technology, at least early on. I know by, I think 2007, 2008, guys in my old unit we were taking heavier casualties and we were getting into more dangerous firefights. But it was, they figured out the tactical advantage of using IEDs. If you can set off an unexpected explosion very early on in the firefight and choose your ground, they were ambushing us in the ways that we'd been really good at ambushing them. Folks, it seems like it's real easy to underestimate your enemy when you're talking about a less technologically sophisticated culture or region of the world. But these people aren't stupid. They may not have the benefits of a formal education, but the bad guys were just as dangerous. I mean, I guess if nothing, they proved that with the execution of the plot on 9/11.
Being in school, I don't know if it was like 3rd or 4th grade, somewhere between there. Pretty sure it was 3rd. It was 3rd or 4th. And I remember they walked everybody out, like all the kids from the school. Like we went out, everyone went outside in the moment when we got attacked. I don't know, I guess it was like protocol or whatever. And then I came home, I remember, and like the TV, the news was on, and all we kept seeing was the airplanes crash into the Twin Towers. Yeah, just over and over and over.
I don't think I really understood it much at the time. I could see the images on the screen and just the dust and the smoke, and in that moment, no one really knew what the heck was happening. And I remember my mom actually just made me go to school really quickly. Said, grab your skateboard and go. So I went to school and then go to school, and half the kids weren't there, and I didn't really get it. And it took a little while to kind of understand what was happening.
They were not thrilled. There wasn't a war on or anything at the time, but
always a chance.
Right, there's always a chance. My dad didn't just missed being drafted in Vietnam and was very much of that era and kind of anti-join the military, make something of yourself, do something with your life. They were proud and supportive once I joined, but they tried pretty hard to talk me out of it.
So I joined the Army when I was 26. I tend to call it my quarter life crisis. I had been bartending, waitressing, barroom managing for most of my adult life. I started working when I was 14 as a kind of like a backup kitchen hand, and I started waitressing and all that. And I was just like, I have nowhere to go with my life. So it was always something I wanted to do. When I turned 18, my dad actually would unplug the phone line so I wouldn't get the recruiters calling me because he didn't want me to talk to them. So it was on the back of my mind just to, if I don't do it now, when would I?
So, I was raised in Long Beach. Like I was born in South Central LA. So I'm a kid from the city, from the inner city. So first generation Mexican. My parents are immigrants from Mexico. Like none of my family has ever been in the service. So it's not like I could ask my dad, that's a veteran from Vietnam or whatever, for his advice. For me, it was just like, I didn't really have any plans to continue going to school. I didn't want to go to school anymore. It was really 3 options for me at least. It was either go to school full time or go get a job or join the military. And that military question kind of came about my senior year just because I saw one of my other buddies join. And I was like, hey, that's interesting. Let me go take a look at that. And I walked into the Marine Corps. I knew that if I was going to join the Marine Corps or the military, I was going to join the Marine Corps. I didn't even go to any of the offices. I didn't even go into any of the offices. I just went straight to the Marines recruiting station, and I loved it. Since the moment I walked in, I recruited myself. The Marine Corps didn't recruit me, and I wanted to be in the infantry. After they described the different jobs, the different MOSs that you can get into. First of all, like I did very poorly on the exam, the ASVAB, for the same reason, because I knew that you didn't need to score high. All you need is the bare minimum to get into the infantry, you know?
I was kind of ready to do something different, and I'd grown up in Long Beach and wanted to kind of get away from home and liked the idea of, being able to pay my own way through college afterwards. And I kind of shopped around. I didn't have a big military history in my family, so I didn't have anybody to ask, and it was pre-Google. I ended up going down to the recruiting office and took the Armed Forces Vocational Aptitude Battery Test, scored pretty decent on it, and they said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, what do you have? And they said, well, you could be in intelligence, you could be a mechanic, you could work with computers, you could shoot guns and blow stuff up. I said, that sounds good, I'll do that. And they said, that's infantry. And I said, okay. They're like, that's usually for guys that don't score so well. I said, well, sounds good to me. And they said, do you want to jump out of airplanes? And I said, nah, I'm scared of heights. And they said, it pays extra. So I said, how much? And then they said, well, we'll give you a Ranger contract. And I said, what's that? More shooting guns and blowing stuff up. You'll figure it out when you get there. And away I went.
It was interesting. I got there in the middle of the day, so it was in the middle of the day in July. It was just past, I think it was July 6th. So I'd spent July 4th in Kuwait, and then got to Afghanistan, and it was just a kind of a whole other world. It really is. It's when you look at the terrain, it actually looks a lot like our deserts out here in California with the mountains and the dirt and everything, but very, very hot. Very, very hot. Over hundreds the whole time. No humidity, thankfully, but where I was at, it was up high in elevation as well, nearly a mile. So you were dealing a little bit with that kind of thin air and just dirt in the air all the time. So when they were making you do PT outside, that was rough.
Yeah, it was definitely the early, very patriotic days.
Right.
Looking to strike back at the folks that took out the World Trade Center.
Yeah. So you had a real good cause.
We sure did. It was interesting. I remember we were doing a training mission outside of the U.S. We spent 6 weeks in Germany, and on 9/11 it was midday when all of this went down, and we immediately got locked down and started packing our bags because the plan wasn't clear, but we figured they were sending us to strike back against somebody pretty quick.
Yeah.
It was the good thing and the hard thing about being in the Ranger Regiment. You knew you were going, and you knew you were going quick.
I thought that, we were going to go fight terrorists, that we were going to go fight the group or the people that had crashed the airplanes into the Twin Towers. So I was like, yeah, I'm down with that. Like, let's go kill some terrorists. But, when I went there, it was 2011, so it was 10 years after the first time I went. And that's where it was like, are we really killing terrorists, or what are we doing here? And that's where like the hard questions started coming out. And it's like when you can't answer some of those questions, but you're putting your life on the line, that's where it becomes difficult to keep being a part of it,
We expected enemy presence. These valleys were not necessarily openly hostile. You didn't have a kind of conventional fielded force arrayed against us, but you did know that there were certain spots that if we kind of drove a convoy of American vehicles through, we might be able to get someone to come out and want to fight us. There were other folks that kind of had the hearts and minds mission and trying to get the local warlords and leaders to come over to our side. We spent a little bit of time conducting raids and going through various villages where we expect a large enemy presence and trying to get high-value targets out of those places.
So you were looking for trouble.
We were looking for trouble. That was the Ranger Regiment's mission. We did airfield seizures, and we did a lot of these kind of directed raids and ambush kind of activities. Go find the enemy and close with and destroy them.
It wasn't modern. It wasn't. So that was a culture shock. So then when you're there, trying to, talk to the kids, make them your friends. They're asking you for chocolate and candy, and then you're like, what the hell are we doing here? Because one moment you get shot at by a dude that's wearing their outfit, whatever they dress like, the man dresses that we call them, and then the next he drops his weapon and just comes out the other side. He looks like the same person, but you can't do anything now.
Right.
Because it's coin, it's counterinsurgency, it's rules of engagement, and you can't just shoot the dude that was shooting at you essentially. But now that he dropped the weapon because of the Geneva Conventions and all of that stuff, international law, but that was him. And that's hard, when you walk past doing a patrol and these dudes are military-age males. They're probably Taliban. But it's difficult. Like, how do you win those guys' hearts and mind, It's almost like a joke. It's like, so that's my entire point. It's like, these dudes had nothing to do with 9/11, in my opinion.
Right.
Like, what the hell are we doing here? Like, this is probably not even the same group of people, but we're here. And you just start asking these hard questions and you don't get the answer to them, and you're sacrificing your life, your limbs, your mental health for it. And it's just like, I still have some of those questions that, I don't know if I'll ever get the answer to. And I think that's why a lot of veterans maybe struggle as they transition, because they want to know those answers. They want to know, a big question that's ringing right now in the community is, was it worth it?
Right.
Was it 20 years worth it? And it's like, well, shit, I could make arguments that it was. And, a lot of people could make arguments that it wasn't. So
Early on, we had a pretty strong tactical advantage over the people we were fighting. We had better equipment. We were trying to draw people out by operating during the day, but our biggest advantage was at night, and we were going on raids in villages to get a high-value target. They couldn't see us coming, and there was a sense of invulnerability, I think, in a lot of the early days in the darkness, simply because we had the technology that they didn't. Talking to the guys that stayed in and continued to go over there, I know that evaporated pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And at this point, it's they've managed to figure out where their combat multipliers are and how to take advantage of where we don't necessarily match up so well against smaller, more nimble forces in the field.
We knew. I think everyone knew that this was going to happen. I think the key word there is the speed at which they took over. I mean, the last thing Biden was saying a couple months ago, that he trusted that the Afghan National Army could sustain the country after we left.
Did you know that they could?
It was a joke, right? It's like, well, where's that at? They took over within like a week or two after.
There hadn't been any army at all.
The thing is, the Afghan National Army didn't even fight, which, you can make that, like, I've heard some veterans and some people in the community saying, like, what a bunch of cowards and XYZ, but it's like, look, dude, if there was a grizzly bear inside of this office and you only had a knife, would you go out there and fight him? Probably not. Probably not. That's a grizzly bear out there. It's like, it's not their fault, man. These guys were not warriors. The Taliban is warriors. I think that's what a lot of people don't understand. These people have been fighting for 40, 50 years. Like, we weren't the first people, the first government, or the first country that they fought off. Before us, there was the Russians, and they've been in conflict for hundreds of years in that region. So it's like they always win, right? They're warriors, like, and I don't say that lightly. Like, you have to respect the enemy, and I think that a lot of the people that have never fought them underestimated them, especially like people in Washington. You think, oh, people in sandals and these ragtag tribal men, but those guys are savages. Like, those guys, they don't operate the way that we do. They have different rules.
The biggest problem is just the situation for the women. You know, it's I've been reading countless stories about, you know, women who have been in law or in government over there, and now they're just terrified because just for the fact that they were able to do that, such an accomplishment for themselves that now they have to worry about being killed for. But I think the fact that we were there for so long did help to foster an environment in the sense of like right now there's protests, like there's women marching in Kabul and in other places, and that never would have happened before. And the fact that these women had
It's dangerous to protest over there.
oh yeah, and it still is, but they're doing it because they were able to grow up in an environment that at least allowed them, you know,
The taste of
a little bit of a taste of some freedom, you know. And I think that's what we did. At least that was something that we accomplished. That's like a positive to a negative, I guess. Like, but unfortunately, it remains to be seen if they're gonna be able to keep that.
Yeah, I think that would have been perfect right there, you know.
Operation.
Osama bin Laden got killed. We smoked him already. We're dumping him in the middle of the ocean, wherever they dumped him, if that was even true. All right, let's call it a wrap. Let's start making plans to withdraw. And I think they did, but it just seems like it took them a long time. It just took so long, which makes sense, I guess. But at the same time, I don't know if 10 years, this could have been done more effectively. Say we killed Osama, we won. Let's say we didn't win, but we could have called the W there.
Yeah.
Let's get the hell out of this place, you know? And continue to monitor, maybe leave some small military presence, just like we did in Vietnam, you know, around the embassy. And yeah, just came back home. Because that's what my whole deal is with these young kids that unfortunately passed away last week, right? Like, that's why that's so hard, because it's like they shouldn't have even been there. Some of those kids were 20 years old. I think like 4 or 5 of them were 20 years old. That means that they were literally babies or born the year that we got attacked in 2001. So it's just difficult because, like, I think most of the guys that were there, let's say 10 years ago, could have told you, like, all my friends understand that we should have been out of there.
I think the planning was a little bit wrong from the get-go. I think that kind of announcing to folks or calling them the enemy, I suppose, after we signed the truce is disingenuous, but certainly adverse to our interest and the interests of our real allies over there. Setting a date in stone on the calendar and planning your withdrawal and the withdrawal of all the support from the people that we've been supporting and training for 20 years, kind of giving that advanced intelligence to the enemy doesn't strike as a great plan. Maybe there was no better way to do it, but it certainly looked like we did what we could to hand the Taliban the...
That certainly accelerated their attack, right?
It certainly did. I mean, they were in Kabul and around the airport before we got everyone else out. You'd hate to see it described as us leaving like a thief in the night, but at the same time, if this was an anticipated imminent danger for our allies and interests in the country, it might have behooved us to be less open about how and when we were planning to leave, and to leave more support in place so that you didn't see kind of a vulnerable mass of troops centered around a couple of gates trying to get civilians and American citizens through. It's hard to watch.
Yeah.
One of my buddies told me, there's 3 stages and there are 3 levels to it. It's tactical, strategical, and operational. And I think, like, what helps me with dealing with everything that's been going on, and I've been struggling, but what helps me is understand, like, at the tactical level, which is at the ground level, at the squad leader, at the grunt level, we just took orders from the top and we executed those orders very well. And that's what the Marine Corps does, so it's not this mess that happened at the end. I don't take accountability for it. It's not my responsibility. I did my job in 2011, 2013, in the time that I was in this whole shit show that happened here at the end. And I also don't want to judge because, You know, I'm not here to question anyone's judgment. Whoever's on the ground, the Marines, the soldiers, everyone that assisted in this last mission, for the most part, I think the guys that were on the ground, they did their best, and they are honorable people. But I think we need to question the way that it was done, you know, by the people that actually gave the orders, not the guys on the ground. Those guys did their best based off of the information and resources that they had, in my opinion.
I did develop some pretty bad migraines while out there. I still kind of suffer from, and I definitely would say I wouldn't call it PTSD, but kind of maybe just a little bit of a heightened anxiety. You know, just with that most recent attack in Kabul, just hearing that people had died kind of threw me for a loop for a couple days, especially until we could find out who it was, or what unit it was that had gotten hurt. Because I knew parts of the 82nd were out there, and so I was just kind of worried. I mean, any death is awful, but it's worse when you read a name you know.
Like for me, I do a lot of space in the veteran community with mental health and veteran suicides, just because I don't know if you guys knew, but there's over 20 veterans that commit suicide every day. You know, that's a real pandemic, let's call it, within the military. That's a real epidemic. That's a situation that all hands should be on deck. Like, more people should talk about that. We should see about how can we help these men and women that have essentially sacrificed so much for us. Because I can tell you from experience, when you're feeling suicidal and suicidal thoughts, it's an overwhelming sensation of anger, of sadness, but it's overwhelming to a point where, like, if you experience that for long enough, you're going to want to take your life. Because if that's your reality, and I have to live with this every day, this overwhelming sensation of anger, and I don't know where to release this energy, I don't know who to talk to, that's very difficult. That's very, very difficult. And that's my hill. That's what I want to fight for, you know.
I think I've lost more friends to suicide than combat at this point.
Wow. What was the stat per day?
22 is what I'd heard.
Yeah, 22.
It's a little bit staggering when you think about it. And then again, it doesn't necessarily seem so strange, right? If you're kind of have gone to the extreme of being willing to volunteer and do these things that are dangerous and risk your life, solving a problem with violence, even if it's against yourself, doesn't feel like too much of a stretch, unfortunately. And I think that's where a lot of guys kind of go with it, sadly. I've lost a lot of people that I never thought I'd lose that way. Had a very good friend who was kind of big in the intervention circuit, for lack of a better term, always kind of active in social media. This guy's down, like, hey, we need to reach out to him, go and make sure he doesn't harm himself. And then a couple of things went badly in his life, and he took his own life by surprise. It was not a good day.
I've had friends, and from my squads, I'm not talking about somebody that I knew. There was a machine gunner that was attached to my squad on my first deployment, Cameron Favela. He was one of the best Marines I've ever known. A phenomenal machine gunner. He died by suicide 5 years after we came back home. This was in 2011. He took his life in 2016. Crazy thing, right around the time that we left to Afghanistan. Right around that. That's not an accident. If you understand mental health, you understand that we have triggers, specific dates, colors, smells, everything that has to do with your senses. And when you get triggered, you could get into this state. That's why it's important to distinguish these things and become self-aware enough to know when you're going to get into that and look for the help or the resources that are going to be able to help you. That's what I've done. And that's the only way that I've gotten, better. There's no other way. You have to advocate for yourself. And that's why this is difficult, because most veterans, for the most part, we were always kind of told what to do while we were in the military. And when you get out, that leadership, that guidance isn't really there anymore, but you have to do it yourself. You know, that's why it's important to have initiative, you know, and, you know, if you're feeling some sort of way, just ask for help. Like, call somebody, reach out.
War's awful. Like, you see and do horrible things that aren't nice to speak about in polite company. And worrying about that and what its greater ramifications are, whether you're religious or not, it gets easy to be down about it. And if you give in to despair, it gets worse, and it leads to substance abuse and mental illness. And I think that's a big component of why we see the numbers we're seeing as far as suicides. It does seem to be worse in the special operations community. SEALs, Green Berets, Rangers, these kind of guys that volunteer for the high stress, high stakes type of stuff, they're extreme enough to not worry so much about the violence of ending their own life. And I think that's a problem.
Like, even if we lost the war, you know, this is what I was telling my buddy the other day, even if we lost the war, they say the average American lives to 80. I'm about to be 30 years old. I have another 50 years. That was 4 years of my life. I did a whole year in Afghanistan. It's like, find a way to accept it, move forward, move on. And you have another 50 years to go, bro. You better not lose that life. Fuck it, we lost in Afghanistan. I'm not going to lose that life, you know? Like, it's all right, dude. Like, we can't win everything, you know? I think it's good that we got humbled as a country in this place. It sucks, but it's like good, you know? Nothing happens by accident. We'll see where it all ends. It's going to be unfortunate for a lot of people, but it's not on us anymore, you know?
Yeah.
But it's hard. It's hard. And that's, a lot of veterans are struggling right now, and it's going to be hard for them too, but they have to find their own answers to these hard questions. For future men and women that are going to join and enlist or get into the military, it's like, if we just give them transparency, that's it. Like, for me, I think, like, the guys that I served with, I still talk to a lot of them. They're war fighters. Like, they're warriors. Like, it came from them we all enlisted because we chose to. Like, this is a full volunteer force, right? This is in Vietnam. That's why, like, it's similar, right? But the guys in Vietnam got drafted. There's a big difference there. Some of those guys didn't have a choice. We had a choice. We knew what we were signing up for. And the collateral damage that comes with it, with PTSD, mental illness, all the stuff that comes with it, got it. The guys that got wounded, got it. But it's like, at least for me, it helps me take accountability for my decision, for me signing that contract, right? And whatever comes with it, comes with it. But I think what's important and what needs to be said here is also, like, just tell us the truth, man. Just tell us the truth. Like, this nation is built of free people, and we'll fight. We'll fight for what's right. I honestly believe that. I believe that Americans will fight for what's right, as long as we're giving all the data and the truth.